Welcome to Coach SG and Friends, where we discuss topics that help you have a better relationship with yourself and others. I am Coach SG, otherwise known as your joyful friend. I'm a relationship coach and life mentor, an entrepreneur and speaker. I'm based out of Los Angeles, but originally from Brooklyn, New York. I love great music, deep conversations, and inspiring people to live their best emotional lives and create their most amazing love story. Let me introduce you to my two friends, Janessa Rose and Lisa Miranda. Janessa is the CEO of Motivational Monsters, a nonprofit that helps people activate mental health and emotional well-being through creative arts. She is the author of How to Stop Being an Effing Bum. BUM stands for Broken Urban Mentality. She's been dubbed the Tony Robbins / Cardi B of motivational speakers, and she calls herself the Galactic Goddess. Lisa Miranda is an actor and creative director. She's also dabbling in producing. She is based in Miami, New York, and Paris. She is a world traveler who speaks several languages, who loves life, good people, and good conversation. So we want to welcome you to our podcast. Let's get started. All right, welcome back, ladies. Welcome back. So today's podcast, we're going to talk about when it's over. And we will also talk a little bit about a retreat as well. And Janessa came up with this podcast episode. So I'm going to throw it over to Janessa.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, today our topic is going to be when it's over, because the truth is relationships end. They come to an end sometimes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be something wrong that happened, or we're fighting, or we're in a negative space. Sometimes people come to the place where they wake up to another level and another chapter in their life, and they're like, this connection no longer serves me. And because there's no evidence of a reason that's negative for me to say, well, of course I want this to end, we tend to stay. We tend to keep it internalized. We battle with guilt and personal shames and things that are heavy on us, because it's just not in our society to leave situations that are just, expired. We need problem. We need conflict to arise in order to say, this is why. So I thought that, often we speak to everybody about, tapping into positive and higher versions of self. But what happens when we are facing a shadow, and the shadow it's evident now, it's illuminated now, and we're like, this is not the connection for me. It's not that the other person's bad, but how do I end this? How do I walk out of this without being responsible for how they receive what I need? I think that's a worthy topic. And so that's why I came up with this topic today. So that's what we're talking about. So if you're in that situation, we understand, and we have prepared some insight and some positive tools to help you be empowered to go through that. And one thing, the first two I want us to discuss is, it's not our responsibility, to process their feelings about what we're going to say. This is the first thing I want you to remove is, how are they going to receive it? That's what's going to stop us from really going through this emotion and saying, why does this need to end for us? Why has it come to an end? Why is it over?
I think anytime we could give people tools to navigate their lives a little bit better, I think it's great. And I think breakups, when it's over, is right up there with like death and loss and stuff that's just really devastating. And I think I've had breakups in my past too, and I just feel like, a lot of times, I think in my instance, I didn't know what to do when people didn't want to meet my needs. Like, what I learned is that I got to fulfill my own needs, but there's some things that I want to co-create with that person. And when they don't seem interested, for many years, I just didn't know what to do with that. I felt like I had to make them. I felt like it meant that they didn't love me, or I wasn't lovable enough, or like, I do these things for you, you don't do it for me. And so I just want to talk about this and give some people some tools. So
all of my relationships when I was younger, I didn't have I didn't have healthy habits that I was taught, or usually the other person didn't have it either. They didn't have healthy examples. So what happens is we don't even know what kind of relationship we're agreeing upon. So we
Right.
don't have these boundaries from the get-go. We don't have these clear intentions, or at least, or getting feedback, except maybe when we're upset at each other. So when things end, it's just like, it was usually so painful because it wasn't clear what we were doing to begin with. So I'm not clear on what exactly is ending. It's just very painful, or there's just a lot of love and a lot of tangled mess that may, if we have the right support, may have worked out. So I think with relationships, advancing in them is knowing that you get to start a new one with clarity, being able to have more ideas about who you are, what you want, what's okay, what's not. Because sometimes the old relationship that you were in, you can't teach it new rules, new standards, and new expectations. It is what it is. So I think a breakup also is an opportunity for you to create the framework for who you want to be and how you want to live, instead of just a loss of something that didn't work out, because you get something from it. You learn something. You become a more evolved person. You expand because of it, no matter what happens. So I think it's very important to honor the fact that you walk out of that as a person who has more clarity.
Absolutely. I agree. I think
love
both
that.
of both of what you guys are saying is key to breaking up. And if we knew these things prior to going in, then we wouldn't be as devastated. I want to double back to what Sherelle was saying. So we often hear the term toxic relationship, right? Oh, this was a toxic relationship, or I remember my toxic relationships, or whatever have you. And what Sherelle just touched on, and it's exactly why relationships become toxic. It's exactly that. I'm a light into the fact that I need something else in the connection and the relationship. But instead of ending it because I know that I have no control over the energy outside of self, I will try to force and make somebody rise to the occasion. That is when we become toxic, or the relationship and the connection becomes toxic, because we're now exerting energy to things we have no control over, right? People may not even be able to show up for you and reciprocate the nature back, because they're just not soul evolved, emotionally evolved. They don't know how to do that. And when someone who they love is coming at them with the attacks, or the you need to be, or I need, and you're not showing up, and because we don't even know when we're doing that, we don't even know how to communicate what we need yet. That's the toxicity. So the real truth, and when you start to look at this, you say, well, toxic relationships are just based off of exceeding the time limit of a connection. Once you become enlightened to something not working, the only answer is, if you have this information and these tools, is it's over. When it's over, right? And what happens is the fear in us, right? We fear the immediate hurt and pain, so we immediately go into attack mode, and this is what brings in a toxic circumstance. But really what's happening is something has come to an end. Maybe the relationship isn't over, but maybe the way you handle the relationship is over. Maybe the way you communicate or don't communicate with one another is over.
I feel like a little bit of what you're talking about is about acceptance. And I think sometimes it's hard for people to get into acceptance when they've been in a toxic habit pattern. I know for me, like at least my very first, like, in my marriage, um, we were very dependent on each other, and very I wouldn't say it was toxic, but it was like what Lisa was saying. I think it was Lisa that was saying that, you just didn't get the tools to know how to navigate problems, because sometimes it's not the love, it's the being able to navigate the problems. Like, here's a problem for us that's unique for us. But what we do is, when there's a problem for us that's unique for us, we reach out to all these outside ways to handle it. So if you cheat, or if you are, not giving me what I need, there's all these articles, or there's all this information that says I got to insert boundaries. I've got to, all these things, and we don't know how to navigate it. And sometimes it's really about like just being creative with that person. And that's why I call it co-creating, because it's like, this is a situation that's just for me and you. It's not for anybody else to decide if it's good, if it's bad, if it's toxic or whatever, because what might look toxic to somebody else might be healthy for our emotional journey that we're on together. But I think what you were saying is about, if it's over, it's over. But how does somebody, I want to ask you this question, and Lisa too, how does somebody who has maybe like, they've got financial ties, they've got 4 kids together, maybe one of them is financially dependent on the other, it's hard to just accept that it's over in that moment when it feels like your whole world is kind of falling apart. So let's kind of talk through that before they can get into like maybe the acceptance mode.
It's unfortunate that sometimes we have to get fed up with our situation in order to change it. We have to decide that our life is ours and ours alone. Sometimes it could take a really long time. It could take years. It could take decades to reach that point. But that kind of freedom of deciding that you're fed up with being unsatisfied and unhappy, which are habits, like I was just talking to a friend yesterday who sent me a message who I love dearly. And she sent me a message about how unhappy she is with her job and all these other aspects of her life. And it's the exact same thing for as long as I've known her. So, and I knew, okay, I was just like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, because there's nothing I could offer except to just remind her maybe that it's her choice. Like, quit, stop doing the things you don't like. But you have to come to that on your own, whether it's a job, a partner, a community. You have to decide that that's enough, and then the path will start to open up on how you can move forward. But you can't let the fear of what you don't know stand in the way of you advancing forward. So of course, having kids, having financial ties, having a family, having vulnerability and history, those are all huge factors. But I don't think they should outweigh your peace of mind and your safety and your dignity. You have to decide that you being happy is more important than the situation.
Yeah. For me, when I think about people in a situation, like I said earlier, I know way more people who want out than they want to stay in, and they're living miserable existences just to save face. So people don't be like, oh, they fell apart, or, oh, girl, it's way more complicated to handle and undo and pick up and repackage my life than for me to leave the situation. Don't forget to put your oxygen mask on first and then reach over to somebody else's. You can't help nobody else, and you can't be good for nobody else if you're not good for yourself. And when you are in the situation where you're saying like, I'm just stay in this shit, then you're not good for nobody. You're going to show up half-assed. You're going to show up frustrated, angry, miserable, rigid, rough. You know what I mean? You're not going to have love in your tone, because the truth is you're angry with self. And we become very conditioned, and the habit becomes, you're the problem, not me. You're the problem. If you can only see that I'm not happy, but it's not up to them. Yes, you will have bills and families and things, and cool if you do, and cool if you don't. It's just as likely as you do as you don't. It doesn't matter. It's still you meeting your personal own issues. Let's remove the other person. So what, you got ties? So what, you got all of this? How are you going to live your life when the clock stops ticking? What will you be remembered as? Miserable and complaining? What do you want on your tombstone? Married but miserable? What do you want this to be? It's that type of time. Are you living to make other people proud of you, or happy of you, or acceptance of you? Or are you going to say, you know what? I just am not in a good space. I want to be where I want to be. I think I know now what I want. It's really just a matter of saying, look, the only 2 things that are real and constant in this life is change and death. Those are the only 2 things that are real and constant. They're happening. There's nothing you could do to stop those 2 things happening. So everything in between, how are you living? Or people have their own issues. It could be that the person is a good person, is a great person. I'm cool. I'm just not ambitious. I don't want to do great things. And I'm married to a person who wants to be an entrepreneur. And I ain't got time for that because I'm just chilling out here. I work all day. I come back and I want to play a couple video games. I don't want to be bothered about that. But the other person's like, but I have a future. I want to listen. It doesn't mean that they bad. It means that you need to man up or woman up and be like, hey, listen, not what I want. This was cool from 15 to 25. I'm checking out. I want new things. That's it. It's simple, but this is the thing. We feel that way. We internalize those things. And then immediately after coming to that enlightenment, that's the part of the shadow that gets enlightened. Like, oh shit, I grew. I don't like that no more. Now I realize I love my person. I've been with them for 10 years, but this is who they are. They're okay with this. So immediately after that enlightenment, and we come to realize, all right, I changed. I want new things in my life now. We immediately embody the responsibility and the guilt of having to blow their shit. Oh, guess what? Sorry, you're gonna have to uproot yourself and find a new path without me. And then all of a sudden we become responsible for that. If I represent myself and stand up for what I really want for my life, then I'm gonna hurt you. That's not my intent. And it's not my responsibility. If you're hurt, you're going to have to figure it out the same way I've been hurt, figuring it out. I just been here. Doesn't mean that I ain't been hurt. I can't blame you. It's my choice. And so this is what happens when it's over. We got to learn how to stop projecting it as to why we want to get out the relationship or why it's somebody else's fault. It's not. That's an old belief system. I'm suggesting that we start to adopt the idea of it's just over. Time's up. That's it. Doesn't matter how you feel about how I feel about it. It's
fine. I wanted to just add, when you do feel like it's over, you have to, only you know at what time is the right time for you to take action. Right. It's not, because we can give you as much, advice and tools, but you have to sense it. You have to trust yourself. You have to be compassionate with yourself, because you can leave and come back. You could leave and regret it. There's all of these different emotions that are completely normal and natural. So you want to give yourself the grace during a breakup, because it's really, really difficult, and you have to decide when that timing, and no one else can do it for you. I think Janessa was saying how relatable toxic relationships are. I was watching a movie the other day, and it was just like a young couple, and it was just like the most like toxic shit. It was like the guy's on drugs and she's just like picking him up off the ground, and of course he ends up dying of like an overdose, and I was just like squirming in my seat, wanting to leave the whole time. And when they were like wilding out in the streets and all this stuff and all, physical abuse, I was just like, actually, I don't want to see this stuff anymore, like, and there was like there was elements that were very familiar to my life, but so distant, because I had decided so long ago, like, I don't want those kind of relationships where, where there's so much harm, physical, mental, whatever. It's just, you have to decide what's part of your story and what's not. And it's for nobody else, or just because other people have lived it doesn't mean that it has to continue to be part of your experience because of where you live or how you look or who's around you. You have those choices. And no matter how long it takes to get to what you want, by letting go of what you don't want, you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think, one of the things that it's kind of what you were just saying, Lisa. I think, you just have to be able to empower yourself to make really good decisions for yourself. I think when it was time for me when I felt like there was a lot of friction and some past relationships, I waited until it got really bad in order to leave, because I felt like I was going to make the wrong decision, or, you feel like I don't want to start this shit all over again with somebody else. I put in this amount of years and all that stuff. And and it's about being loyal too. Like, you really just want it to work. If there's a lot of friction, it's either giving you some feedback that, something needs to change in how you're operating this teamwork, or, it's time to jump ship. And I think one of the things that, at least for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but, when I was in a relationship, I just knew how to be a team. I didn't know how to be independently thriving and how to fulfill my own needs. I mean, I felt like I was good by myself. I was good being single, but I really didn't know how to like make myself thrive, so that when I showed up to a relationship, I didn't like suck the life out of the person or make them the reason that I felt loved, that I felt empowered, that I felt anything. And when you put that on somebody else, it makes it really hard. I think now I'm learning how to independently thrive, and I'm still learning every day because it's not something I was used to. I have all the information in my head, but being able to apply it, is a little bit different. So I'm learning how to be independently thriving and to be with somebody else who's also independently thriving, so that we can be a thriving couple and be able to, because here's the other thing is when problems would arise, I didn't know how to handle them. And, that's the difficulty in like where things become to a point where you break up, because you can break up. I think like Janessa was saying, you could break up and then you could repeat the pattern again. But, you're just bringing you to this next relationship. So it's okay to walk away from a relationship. Relationships are not supposed to be forever and, whatever. They're here to teach you. And you got to take something away when you walk away from that relationship.
You've definitely learned something in those things, but you have to become aware. Often we don't learn the lesson because we wait until something is wrong. We wait for our opportunity to blame the ending on someone else so we can avoid the responsibility for the way they feel about how, what we need. And that is the internal work that I wanted to like really bring into the light, because that's the main thing that's happening internally when we've come to that place of, I don't want to be in this. We will wait, we will stay unhappy, we will do what Sherelle said, which is go to, we look for things outside, other relationships, maybe other activities and things to keep us busy, whatever that looks like. And it's really just about, fearing the ending, but endings are just new beginnings. That's just universal law. Endings are new beginnings, so it's scary and it's valid, and yes, you can feel all these guilts and all these things, but that's the work. When you're feeling those things, that is the work. That's the compass. That is you have higher faculties built into your system here, your aura, your mind, your body. This is your higher faculties. When you're feeling like, oh my God, I feel bad about this, these are things to get, like Sherelle says, get curious, right? Why do you feel bad if you tell your lover or your partner, I want to leave? Because I really do care about them. Okay, so how are you showing up in the relationship if you really care about them? I'm avoiding it by all costs because I don't want to be in it. So now you're looking a little bit deeper. So if I really love them, I'd let them go so they can find someone who really wants to be with them and really show up for them. And then I also get that opportunity to say, it's okay. They may not see it now, but I'm doing this because they deserve better. And I'm not really the one who wants to give it. You start to bust open little pieces. This is just my experience, right? But you burst open little pieces and say, oh, okay. And then when you get into them, you say, oh shit, look, here I am with my new love who works for me, where I work with them. This person moved on, married, children. It happens all the time. But we got to get curious about it instead of saying, no, I don't like to feel this. No. This is our negative energy and our negative emotions. They're just guidance. It's just a guide. It's a free guide.
I have a question for you, Janessa. So how do we help someone get to the other side of this when, you have these toxic examples of relationships and, there's all this dependency and like, you need to behave so I can feel better. And then, so how do they move from that kind of framework when that's when all that they've experienced? And I know like when I used to go somewhere and I had an issue, you needed to know all the details about what happened so that you can understand how bad they were to me, instead of me saying like how I needed to change. I could not see how I needed to change.
Yes, I get that 100%. So it takes time, right? But for the first thing that I got to say is that it's different for everybody. Nobody's framework is going to look the same. That's number one. I could tell you this. You might not, if you don't like conflict, sitting down and having a conversation with somebody and confronting it may not be the thing you're willing to do.
What if you don't mind conflict, but that particular person, because I have a particular person in my life that even I don't care how zen I am, that person can set me off more than anybody else. So Are you
Yeah.
saying in that instance, you should disconnect from the conflict, not necessarily the relationship, but
Well, it depends, right? So whatever it is that doesn't feel good to you, you gotta, that has to be your reason to look inward and say, well, why is it that it's feeling like that? For instance, if I, like for me, I'm a person who does not shy away from conflict, right? However, I'm not a person who deliberately likes to hurt people. And I've been in this situation that we're discussing. I've been in this situation, and I was dating somebody, and it was a short-lived situation. And I was just like, whatever. I just wanted to rebound. I was young, and that's how I handled shit, right? And I started engaging with this other dude. He was like head over heels in love with me. He thought we was like a thing. In my mind, I was like, this is not a thing. And
right.
the more and more and more the situation got annoying to me, I was like, yo, look, I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to have a problem about it. I don't feel like you're my man, so there is no problem. You're in conflict alone because I'm not your person. Like, yeah, we've been having a thing, but I'm not your person. I understand, but look, here's this, here's that. I gave the person like a severance package. And I'm like, dead ass. I said, listen.
What do you mean by that? What did you give him? Money?
I gave him money and some life-changing advice, and he didn't take the life-changing advice. He was a good kid. He was cool, and I just started messing with him. I just came out of a breakup. I just moved out to Florida, and I just started like fucking around with this guy. Anyway, he started to show examples of shit that I did not want. So when he started to, show up like, oh, you hurting me. This hurts. I've been here. I've been staying with you. I don't got nowhere to go. He started putting all his shit on me. I was like, this is what I heard. And my mom was like, it's over. Like, this is too much. So I said, look, I get it. I want you to know that I don't want to sit here and tell you like, you ain't shit. You're not for me. Make and break you apart. I'm just trying to explain to you, this is not what I want. And I get that. And I want you to understand that I'm not going to be responsible for the way that you feel. I don't want to take care of no man. I don't want to pay for you to live. I don't want this. I don't want it. That's not what I need. I need another thing. What I need is not your business, because I don't need you to apply for it. So check it out. Here's some money. Get yourself where you got to go. I was encouraging him to learn how to, connect to people without throwing all that heaviness on them. It's just too much.
Well, I think that's what I was talking about. It's about like being dependent on another person, and you put so much on them for how you feel that it makes it really hard to enjoy time with you.
Right. This was a person that was in that space. This was that kind of a circumstance. So I gave him a severance package, and I remember Lisa's dying. I remember him being like really fucked up over it, like, and being like, nah, like non-accepting of it. And I remember being real rough at the end of it, like, listen here, you cannot come back here ever again.
It's bizarre to me how people who are like unequipped to live their life, they think that you guys can have a happy, healthy relationship together. You have to know what you want and be so clear about it, because other people could decide that you are exactly what they want and that somehow it could still work out, even though that's not your trajectory. So it's so important that you don't, of course, sometimes you will falter, you will make some choices that give you, more clarity on what you want, but don't get yourself caught up in a situation that you already know from the get-go isn't good for you. When you're in a breakup or a breakup period, it's a very vulnerable, confusing, sad time, normally, or at least it could be, to whatever range. So you really have to put the time aside to hear what you have to do to get that kind of guidance that could only come from yourself. I had lunch a couple days ago with a friend that I've known for years, and first time he met my partner, and he was like, I like him, because I was going to tell you if I didn't. I would tell you if he was bad news, like all this stuff. And I just like, thanks. Like, you see, that's why you're my friend, because I'm that kind of person too. And then I realized, well, actually, I've decided not to be that kind of person anymore, because I know some fantastic people who are with like people who I want to say, run, Forrest, run. But I realized it's not my business, and that doesn't help them leave that situation any sooner. Perhaps at the best, it would just make things uncomfortable. So while before I applauded that type of thing, telling someone, hey, you're in this situation that's not good for you, or you could do better, or you could whatever. But I'm starting to understand even more the virtue of just minding your own, especially when it's unsolicited, if they're not asking, because it's not for you to decide when someone should be with someone, or why they should be with someone better, or how this relationship doesn't work or can't work or shouldn't work, because there's a lesson in there for them. And all you can do is pray that they get that message. But yeah, definitely if it's unsolicited. But I know if they do ask, I think that it's important to share, because the people we care about, we don't want to see them in an awful cycle. And people are only ready for what they're ready for, and that knowledge and that understanding comes from listening to yourself, not necessarily your friends or family.
100%. Excuse me.
I know for me, I had to adopt a different belief system, because for I don't know, I just felt like relationships were really hard for me. When I was ready to end it, it was easy to end it, but during the time, I just felt like, people just, I don't care how nice I am, people are still fucked up, But what I had to adopt is a different way to see things, and that everything that comes into my life, it's based on my vibration, it's based on what I'm attracting, and there's a lesson that I need to learn out of this. So I can just be curious and I can figure it out, or I could try to manage it. And and that's not always easy for me to do, but I think what I learned from that time is that, if I'm in blame and judgment, then I'm not in that I attracted the situation, and there's something for me to learn. And even the most like toxic situations were there to teach me something. But, I was so into blaming them that I didn't even get I didn't get the lesson, because I felt like they were toxic and they were in my life to stress me out. And not that, hey, I'm creating this experience with them, and I could change and I could be different, so that I can at least draw something different from them. So
I love that, sis. Like me too. So what you just said was like, so I can draw something different from them too, right? So that's still the intent of staying in. But what I'm learning to navigate, right? And
no, it's not actually. Let me tell you why. Because I have somebody I used to be with, but we still had financial ties. We still had other things that we still had to work on. So if I didn't change what I was drawing for them, I could have made my life like super miserable. So sometimes you have kids, sometimes you have other things that you can't just break away completely. You may have, you're co-parenting, all this kind of stuff. So sometimes you just want to draw something different from someone, because you just really love them. You really love them, and you don't want to trigger them. And you really want to do something different, because whatever you're drawing for them is causing you some angst. So I just decided I want to draw different things from people. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Do I still get my feelings? I was in my feelings all day yesterday. Here's the good part about it, is that I know how to elevate my vibration so that I can, I don't want to have conversations where my vibration is not elevated. But go ahead. What you were going to say.
No. I get that. And I think that's dope. But what I've come to realize, and what I'm still navigating and learning out of that lesson, is like outgrowing each other. A lot of times, basically, when it's over, somebody outgrew the situation, somebody outgrew the connection. And it's hard at that moment when you've outgrown something and they're like, what do you mean? And they can't see it, and you can't even explain it. You know what I mean? Like that's that point. And I just suggest that when you're at that when you're at that point and you're the person who outgrew the situation, please free yourself. Don't stay small, because it's hard for you to explain, or you may not have to explain it. Because it even hurts to say the simple sentence of I've outgrown this. It even, you immediately think like, well, what I'm feeling is this doesn't serve me anymore, and I've outgrown it. And then it's like the person's like immediately like, well, what can I do? And it's like, nothing, I can grow. No, I don't want to wait for you to do that. It takes time. It took me time.
Yeah.
Like, so my main thing is, when it's over, it's okay. It doesn't have to be problematic. You just have to be okay with you knowing that you're done. You ain't got to worry about how they feel about it. That's their work. Because a person who is doing work too, once you say that, they're gonna be like, oh, I was battling with that too. But yeah, I agree. I resonate. I feel that. I get it. Even if they tell you, I don't want this to be over, I feel like we could still work through this. But if you feel like it's over, then I could get that. That's another person who's also growing too. Maybe just didn't know how to confront it. But that's the main thing. My main advice, my tool, Janessa's personal tool for you is, please do not take on the responsibility of how somebody else feels. That's keeping you imprisoned in a connection. That's how I feel.
I would agree. That's the end of part 1 for this episode. See you in the next episode for part 2. My joyful friends, that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and leave a review. Share this episode with someone you think would get some value out of it. We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.